What is going on, Sales Talk Uncensored? It's David Huffman, the Huff, your mentor, coming with you. And today we have another special episode. I have a guy with me. He has sold a shit ton of real estate. I'm talking a lot of units, 100 plus units in the last couple of years. In fact, last year alone, his team got over 100 listings. His name is Daniel Putz. He works out of Reno, and I'm going to let him tell you a little bit about himself. Then we're going to tie into his story and what it takes to have that successful mindset and to go from what he came from to where he is now. So why don't you go ahead and tell him about yourself, Daniel?
Hey, thanks for having me here, man. I know we've been planning this for a little while and finally got it together, so thank you. So I was basically a loser, didn't do shit. You know, I wasn't a bad person. I wasn't getting in trouble with the law or anything, but really didn't have anything going on in my life that I could be proud of up until the point I was about 32 years old. I'm working at a golf course for $9 an hour. Ended up getting fired from that golf course because they said they needed somebody who was more committed to the job. I was also bartending at the same time. And at that time when I got fired from the golf course for a $9 an hour job, when you're 32 years old, you start to look at yourself, well, at least I did, and I thought, wow, man, I am not living up to my potential. You kind of feel like a piece of shit. Probably about a week later, someone put a book in front of me, 10X Rule. You know that book, I'm sure.
Grant Cardone.
Grant Cardone.
Right now.
This was a while back. I mean, this was 6-7 years ago. Someone put that book in front of me. Hadn't heard of the guy. I got lucky that someone put that book in front of me, and it changed my mindset. It changed the way I thought about money, the way I thought about business, the way I thought about people. And after reading that book, I decided, hey, I need to find something a little bit more entrepreneurial. I want to get into sales. I want to have the vehicle that does not limit the amount of money that I can make. And working for someone else wasn't going to be the answer. Eventually what happened is shortly after that, moved to Reno, Nevada, out here with my girlfriend of the time.
Where were you living at before?
I was in San Jose, California.
Okay, and is that where you were brought up, kind of raised and stuff?
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll say San Jose, California for the most part. Came out to Reno, took the first job that I could get. I was working at the fucking Atlantis buffet. It was, a $38,000 a year job, which equates to about $2,200 a month after you pay your taxes and after you pay a mortgage on your home. I had about $60 a week left over for food, gas, and anything else. At the same time, I decided I'm going to get into real estate, and I don't give a shit about houses for the most part. I don't really care about being a real estate agent. What I cared about was there was an opportunity to work as many hours as I wanted to work, and there was no cap on the income. Nobody was going to tell me anymore how much money I could make. Nobody was going to tell me how many hours I could work, or I wasn't going to get written up at my fucking job because I had 10 minutes of fucking overtime for some bullshit, which is what was going on at the Atlantis. Which, by the way, if anybody's local here in Reno listening to this, the Atlantis Casino, great place. Owner John Farahi was always super cool to me. Has nothing bad to say about the Atlantis whatsoever. But I knew that working there was not my potential either. So I got into real estate, and I got lucky. Somebody who I met, I was buying a motorcycle from, said, go check out this brokerage called KW. I went there, got into real estate. Shortly after, started knocking doors. When you don't have any money, and when I say you don't have any money, I'm talking about not having money to where you can decide whether or not you're going to eat lunch or you're going to put some gas in your car. Those are the decisions that I was making. So you just go without food, and you'd go drive to the office, get your little fucking flyers, and I'd have to go out and knock doors. So I'd knock doors day after day after day. It took me about 6 months to get anything into contract because there was no training. Nobody had been successful knocking doors at Keller Williams. People had done door knocking, but nobody was actually door knocking for a living. It was just one of those activities they tell the fucking new people to go do because nobody else wants to do it, and it's free. Yeah.
So actually, it's very funny because the very first place I met you at was actually at the broker and stuff, and during training. And you come in and you start talking. I'm like, hey, this guy makes sense. Well, he's not pussyfooting around with this bullshit, like telling us to do X, Y, Z and telling us to do whatever. He's like, no, man, you got to sit down and chew your gum, and you got this hard look on your face, and you're being honest with us. And I'm like, that's kick ass.
Right, yeah, because that's, I mean, unfortunately, I feel like in the real estate world, when these new agents come in all bright-eyed and bushy-tailed with dollar signs in their eyes, they are somewhat delusional about what it's really going to take to get the business moving.
Well, and a lot of it, especially for me, was the process. It wasn't until I actually switched to new broker and I started understanding the process. I started understanding that when I'm on the phone, I'm selling the appointment. When I'm at the appointment, I'm selling the contract. I'm selling a buyer's agreement or the listing agreement. But back at the initial broker, it just didn't click for me. I'd go door knocking, I'd do X, Y, Z, and it's like I'm spinning tires. I'm a social media guy. Like, none of this shit makes sense, and none of this shit's working. Like, why do people do this? Now it's making sense because shit don't work. They just told you to.
Yeah, and I didn't know if it was working or not either. And that was probably the worst part. I'm working 2 jobs. I'm at the Atlantis full time, and then every other minute of my life was going into real estate, which was out in the neighborhoods.
You're doing like 3-4 hours a day door knocking, right?
At least.
Yeah.
Basically, I'd work at the Atlantis in the morning, and then I'd get off about 3:30 in the afternoon and go knock doors until sundown. Rain, shine, snow. Yeah, it didn't matter what was happening.
So you're doing that. How many leads were you getting? Were you actually getting leads and able to build up our business, or were you kind of turning, spinning your wheels?
Definitely spinning your wheels because you don't know what the fuck to do. Okay? So, especially when you're new and nobody at the brokerage really had a formula down for how this thing worked. It's all theory, right? You can read as many books as you want about the golf swing. Go try to hit a fucking golf ball, see what happens. It's hard, right? Same thing,
right?
Yeah, you're gonna shank, you're gonna slice.
Right.
So it was kind of the same problem, which was there was no real mentor there at the time to help me get through any of the process. So it was trial and error, and it was trial by fire, which was, get the fuck out there, either make it happen or you don't.
Which is that 10X rule, right?
That was it. So obviously I had 2 options, and I actually only had 1 option. It was stay at the Atlantis forever and work at that fucking buffet, because that's all I had, or go knock doors until you get something going. And I chose all day. I'm going to go suffer and knock these doors. Snow, rain, shine, doesn't matter, 105 degrees. I'm out there knocking doors until finally something broke. So I'd get what I thought were leads. I'd get 2 to 3 a day, sometimes 0, sometimes 5. But I also didn't know how to follow up properly. I didn't know how to lead people through a conversation. I didn't know how to, get people interested in doing business with me.
Drip campaign.
Drip campaign.
Use technology to your advantage.
Yeah.
I feel you.
So eventually it broke, but it took about 7 months for me to actually get my first deal in escrow, which when you're working 2 jobs and nobody can tell you whether or not what you're doing is working, 6 months feels like a long fucking time to be out there humping and getting nothing out of it.
So it's kind of funny because I didn't know with your story that you're actually fired from the golf club and fired from the bar, for being non-committed. Because now I look at you and it's like it's absolutely insane. Like, you look at some of your goals that you have and some of the goals that you tell me, and I'm like, that's phenomenal considering 6-7 years ago you're fired for being non-committal from a $9 an hour job. So you got fired, you read the 10X rule, you realize, hey, I'm kind of fucked up, and there's one of my favorite books out there called Unfuck Yourself. Like, and it's funny because if you listen to the Audible version, it's like this Irish guy, and it's the best freaking sounding thing ever. But he mentions that if you have something fucked up in your life, you can either tolerate it or change it, and you changed it. How did your goals and your mindset change? Like when that transition took place to go from the hey, I'm kind of messed up to I need to fix myself and I need to do X, Y, Z.
It took time. I mean, the changes that I made were not overnight. Now, I always had pretty good work ethic, but I didn't actually have the desire to push shit to the next level unless somebody was telling me that I had to do it, especially at a job. I was the guy who would do anything you told me to do at the job, but I probably wasn't going to go above and beyond and go the extra mile. After reading the 10X rule, it gave me the idea, kind of like, well, fuck what my employer says. I'm going to do what I think is going to push this business forward. Or wherever I was at, I was now thinking of ways to, how am I going to gain clients? For instance, I'm working at the Atlantis. I start building relationships with everybody who comes into the restaurant instead of being that fucking manager who just hides in the back on a cell phone the whole day. I'm out there talking to people. I knew I wasn't going to be at the Atlantis forever, but I knew that I also was really shitty with people, and I had to start building those skills. So it took a long time. I'm an extreme introvert. I mean, I had problems talking to anybody, approaching anyone, and knocking on doors was terrifying for me. Now, I'm not a small guy. I mean, when I was out knocking doors, I'm 6'1", about 230 pounds at the time. And I was terrified to knock on someone's door like, you're out there doing something wrong. It was that interaction that I was afraid of because I didn't know what I was doing, and I'm not a people person.
I can relate with that, being a big guy and being a natural introvert myself. It's funny because very similar to you, like people look at you and they're like, oh, you're this naturally driven person, you're this natural salesperson. That's not the case. Back before sales, I was working in the serving industry too, and I was a bartender. My very first manager had to teach me how to smile. Now it's funny because I have quote unquote my salesman smile. I smile down to the point where I get crow's eyes. Like my fake smile looks like a real smile.
Yeah.
And I know that that's just a symbol of a real smile because I read these body language books and stuff. But it's funny because a lot of people say that sales is this natural thing, and you're hearing that sales is this natural thing. And very similar to Dan, I'm an introvert myself. And a lot of stuff that I do, the verbiage that I use, the actions I do, the habits and stuff, is systems and processes that have been taught to me. Stuff that I see successful people doing. So I'll sit down and I'll model that and I'll emulate that. And is that something that you notice yourself doing too?
Absolutely. Yeah, I had to watch a lot of videos. I would watch Grant Cardone videos and try to say the things that he would say, smile the way that he smiles, say the same words. Smile. Yeah, I had to watch all these videos, and it took a long time. It was not an overnight process to transform, and I failed all over the place.
Oh yeah.
I mean, all over the fucking place. I failed all the time, and it's embarrassing, and it's embarrassing when you fuck up on your scripts and you're out knocking on someone's door, or they slam it, the door in your face, and you're standing there with your papers in your hand, and you've got no deals. You've never done a deal before, and you're like, fuck this. You're like, this is bullshit. Who told me to go knock on doors? This doesn't fucking work.
Not at all.
I'm wasting my time, but it does work. And I just hadn't put in the time yet, and the leads I was getting, I didn't understand that it took time to nurture them. You're under the perception that someone's going to open the door and they're going to be like, yeah, I'm ready to list my fucking home. And you're like, yeah, all right, here's the contract now. Yeah, it was a process, but it was interesting because the people that I talked to in the first month or two of me going out knocking doors started to convert 6 months later. And then I realized, there's a fucking sales cycle that's a lot bigger than I thought it was going to be. And then things started to get rolling for me. And it wasn't because I was Mr. Bright and so scripted and studied and all this shit. It's because I was consistent. I was consistently knocking the doors day in and day out, gathering people's names and information and emails and trying to follow up. Although it was really shitty follow-up, it still worked. It was just ineffective.
Perfect action, right?
Just taking the action. That was it, man.
It's funny that you mentioned the knock on doors and forgetting your script. The very first scripted sales appointment I ever went on, I was 20 years old, something like that, in Washington, D.C. And I go on this call, and I have my manager there, and I'm nervous as hell. I'm not a presenter. I got a 9th grade education. I have low self-esteem. I'm convinced that I shouldn't be in the position that I'm in.
Yeah.
So I get there and start running through this appointment, and sure as shit, about 2 paragraphs in, shoot, what's my next line? I can't remember it.
I'm with you. I've gotten stuck on the phone so many times. I've gotten stuck in person, at appointments, in front of people. It takes a while.
You went to that first broker. You jumped around, kind of tried some stuff. You knocked on phones. Definitely, that's not the Dan I know. Dan I know is this phone guru. Makes just a stupid amount of phone calls. Makes an insane amount of listings and stuff like that. So what are you doing now compared to back when you were at the first broker and way back when you're door knocking?
Yeah, so here's what I figured out. And what I learned was that because of my size and stature and maybe having a shaved head and looking like I'm there to talk about Jesus or politics, people didn't want to open their door so much for me as opposed to some of the girls that we'd go out door knocking with. Let's be honest, the doors would open for the females, not as much for me. I discovered the telephone and realized really quickly I was much better over the phone, and I was being received much better over the telephone because my presence wasn't standing in front of somebody's door. People were willing to talk to me a little bit more. Reason number 2, I'm kind of fucking lazy. Walking around neighborhoods in the snow and the sun, it's a lot of fucking work. But I could talk to 3 times as many people in half the amount of time on the phone that I could while I was out knocking doors. So I made the transition between door knocking to getting on the telephones, and that's another type of beast is getting on the telephone. So where I was having success in door knocking, I went to the telephones to 0. I had 0 success on the phones for probably the first 5-6 months, and then I kind of got used to what I needed to do in order to get people to share their information with me and then move forward. So what I learned, the difference between knocking on doors and the phones, when you're knocking on doors, the people see you, they know who you are, you can physically hand them something, they already kind of know who you are, you hand them something, they keep it. On the telephone, you're one step removed. They have no idea who's calling. They immediately don't trust anybody who's calling.
A lot of usually go click.
Get rid of you. So you have to build an extra step on the phone before you get to the point to where they're willing to talk to you about their future plans. So you're one step removed from being in person, meeting somebody face to face. And so that extra step took a little while to learn, okay, I've got to do things a little differently to gain people's trust. And then the follow-up's different as well over the telephone.
Oh, yeah. So it's funny because actually I used to door knock because I hated calls. And it's because of that click factor.
Yeah.
You know, I was way back when I was younger. I hated hearing that click. And it's a lot harder to slam a door in my face when I'm in front of you. But similar to you, I'm a big guy. You know, if you look at the Ken Shamrock interviews that I just did, and that's a professional wrestler, and I'm the same size. Like, I'm not the most ideal candidate to be knocking on doors. So it's funny that you bring up the phone thing, and Dan doesn't know this yet, but I'm going to convince him to do like a little 15, 20-minute training on some phone calls and phone scripts here after this podcast. And I'm going to post that in a Sales Talk Uncensored group. So search on Facebook, Sales Talk Uncensored group, and check that out. So with the calls and stuff, what are some of the habits that you have going on there and some of the successful stuff that you do day in and day out to ensure that, hey, my business is growing? You know, last year we did 100 plus listings. This year your goal is 100 plus listings. Am I right?
Yeah, well, we're trying to get them all sold this time. So getting a listing's one thing, getting them all sold is a different problem, different beast.
So for those high numbers, what are like the daily habits and daily routines that you have, apart from drinking way too much Starbucks?
Right, yeah, I know. I'm definitely addicted. So the most important part about getting on the phone is showing up and getting on the fucking phone. And that may seem really basic, but you have no idea how many people have that call reluctance where they show up and they just can't put the headset on. They just can't start dialing the numbers. They'll waste time. They won't do the work. They'll be on Facebook. They won't be paying attention when somebody does answer. So get into the office and you got to put the headset on right away. It doesn't matter if you're nervous, doesn't matter how you feel, you just put it on and you start dialing. I'm very, very rigid on my time. I am calendared tight where nothing gets in my way between 8 in the morning and noon. There are no appointments. I'm not leaving the office. We're not going to eat. I'm not checking on an escrow. I'm not looking at emails. We're on the phone. That's it. So it keeps you focused on dialing and it keeps your head in the game and it keeps you making sure that you're actually making the calls, because so many times people just get on a dialer, they'll start dialing, but they're not actually paying attention. And someone will answer a phone, click, and it'll be 5 minutes before they realize what's happened and they're on their phone on Facebook. Just making the dials is the key, really. If you're putting in enough dials, you're going to be successful. Okay. Now, are you efficient? Maybe not. So being efficient on the phone is practice and skill. Don't get me wrong. I can take people who are brand new and help them set listing appointments within their first week of getting on the phone. That is possible. Now, getting really good at it is going to take quite a while. I mean, it could take 3, 5, 6, 7 months before you actually feel comfortable with the things that you're saying. But I can help people that are completely nervous, stuttering, screwing up the scripts and still help them set for sale by owner and expired listing appointments, as long as they make the call and follow the directions and the rules of what you're supposed to be doing off the scripts.
So after 12 p.m. and after that cold calling, that lead generation time, how is the rest of your day kind of set up for success? Do you have anything else special that you do?
Nothing is special. So let me be clear. In real estate, you have two jobs. One is either lead generation. Okay, you're either lead generating for people to join your team, or you're generating for leads for people you can sell. Your other job is to service your clients and close the business that you currently have going. So if you are on the phone and at noon hits and you don't have an appointment and you don't have anything to go do for the rest of the day, guess what? You're punished by being on the phone the rest of the fucking day until you go home. There's nothing else to do. Zero. Now, people can make up all kinds of shit that they need to go do in real estate, and it's all horse shit. You either are lead generating or you're servicing the business that you have to deal with. So lead generation always takes priority, because without it, you will not have any business going forward. And then if you are not servicing business, where you're meeting with clients, negotiating offers, trying to get a deal to close, you're on the phone for the rest of the day. So you're either in the office lead generating, or you're out on appointments getting new business. And if you're not doing that, you're back in the office lead generating. It's very, very simple. It's basic and it's boring as fuck, but that's the reality. So if you find yourself doing other things and making up reasons why you're not in the office lead generating, you're burning time, and that's okay. I'm not here to judge what anybody does with their business. Just telling you guys what I do with mine.
Well, it's funny you say that, because I've been on this entire tangent about success is boring, because people want to see this Instagram, this Facebook thing, and that's not the case, man. Like, I stare at a blue screen 6 hours a day. I sit down and film X hours a day. I'm editing. Oh god, dude, it's god awful. Like, the same meals every single day, working out like every single day. It's routine. That's what success is: small steps in a specific direction. So now you have your own broker, right? Like your own brokerage.
I got my own team. I don't want to be a broker, because I don't want to be a babysitter to other people's problems. Yeah. So I run a real estate team now. So I have people that work for me that I pay directly. We are about 5 people total in the team right now, soon to be 6, and we're definitely still looking to expand. So if anybody's interested in the real estate game, give us a call.
And Dan, too, I can personally vouch for him. If you are underneath Dan, if you're going to put in the effort and everything else, he's not going to let you fail. I mean, this is by far one of my favorite guys in Reno. And it's something really cool, too, with his team and everything that he's doing. He actually has a podcast that you can follow. So, like I said, he's super successful. And with this podcast, he actually takes you along with his team and some of the stuff that's going on with this team. But if you want to find more of him, check out his podcast. Why don't you share with my viewers kind of what your podcast's about, where they can find it at?
Yeah, we're on. You can find us on iTunes, Stitcher. We are the Get Your Ass to Work podcast. It's all kind of the same principles that we're talking about here today. And the podcast is more or less about the problems that I'm trying to solve that week. And if you take a look at the podcast, we do some interviews with some people. The podcast, where it's just me on there solo, I am directly talking about problems that I'm dealing with and solutions that I've come up with to all sorts of problems in business or personal relationships, finances, whether you have to hire someone, fire someone, how to deal with employees, all kinds of issues that are going to come up in business. And we're going to talk about it, and it's much like this podcast here. My mouth is pretty uncensored, so we're going to give it to you guys real, and it's going to be straight up on things that it's going to take in order to be successful in real estate and in business.
So kind of like Uncensored, you have ass in the name, so you guys cannot get offended over 4-letter words. Please do not leave in the comments, David, I checked out Get Your Ass to Work, I'm offended. He swore. So don't do that. But check out Get Your Ass to Work and check out Daniel Pudd's Absolute Beast. And don't forget, log on over to the Sales Talk Uncensored Facebook group and check out this training I'm about to